That's done by my team. If you want to follow me, all the details are there. So happy to connect, and very important as well. You can find all my sessions on Sessionize. So if you have a future request for in the future, don't hesitate to contact me. Actually, I don't do that often, remote sessions, because like what Warren was saying, even in the Netherlands, I'm one of the organizers of the Dutch Fabric user group. We only do it in person just because of the networking, and we do see people get disconnected when they are online. I see some people, sorry for the people at home, but like this was like a hybrid one, so that's why I said yes to Nico, and he was the first one. He was really like, "Oh, I've seen that session. Looking forward. Can you present that?" And I couldn't say no. So I only said after Las Vegas, because there was a lot of stress to get it all running. So I did my session at about 250 people in Las Vegas. So I had a full room. So that was pretty cool. And I was one of the last sessions of the day. So even if you have, and one of the last sessions, I was on Wednesday. Well, I was on Wednesday, yeah. So that was the last day of the conference as well. So I don't prefer to have one of the last sessions of the conference, because then people are already in the mood leaving home after the party the evening before. That's the same if you have to do a session at SQL Bits at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning or 9 o'clock on Saturday morning while everybody is still partying all night long. So yes, you will see me as well in SQL Bits, but you will see me the coming weeks doing a lot of events, because I think I'm always already home, leaving home for every weekend. So happy to be here. So what I said, yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about how you can build your Fabric framework with Fabric databases. So that's the new kid in town, and of course Data Factory. And yeah, I've been working with Data Factory really ages. Like I started with Data Factory version 1. I don't know if people started with that one, but it wasn't like the nightmare one. And then we started with V2. So that's all. And that's all my life. I like to build everything with Metadata-Driven, and I like to work with new stuff. So within our company, we only work with Fabric, and we only serve our customers, of course, with Fabric. But what we currently see for a lot of customers is that once you build stuff and we do assessments as well, then we see like 1,000 pipelines every pipeline is doing their own small job, instead of having, for example, one pipeline which can do all the jobs. So that's for maintaining better. That's if you take some managed services as a customer, if you take managed services from a Microsoft partner, you mostly pay per artifact or whatever. But the less artifacts you have, they run the same thing. If you want to change something for logging information, you only have to change one pipeline or several pipelines, etc., etc. It makes your lives easier. So that's the goal for today, how we can make that your life easier. And then, of course, out of the box. And the main thing is, why should you use a framework? So if you have questions during the session, don't hesitate, just scroll out, because I'm not seeing every time all the screens. So make it interactive, because otherwise I'm sending data 1 hour long and I can talk very fast. So if I have to go slow down, please let me know. But why should you use a framework? Huh?
Thanks, Erwin. We'll definitely call out. We'll monitor the chat, and yeah, everybody else on the call, like Erwin said, make it interactive. So if you have a question, jump in. Thanks a lot, Erwin.
Or just because not every time I see the screen. So if you put in your hand in Teams, just say hello. Hey, I have a question, because that's easier for me.
100%.
Why should you use a framework? In my opinion, that's of course one of the key things is automation, but also how can you create like more scalability in your organization? How can you make stuff more traceability, and how can you create your own flexibility? So what I always said, you have one goal, and there's one thing you want to maintain, is I will not repeat myself. That's one of the questions I'm always saying. So don't repeat yourself. I think this is one of the codes, dry, and that's also regarding frameworks. If you don't repeat yourself, that means that your code will be maintainable in the future as well. if you build spaghetti today, then you can't create lasagna in the future of it, because then you start it and you start building on top of it, and you start building on top of it and on top of it, and then after 6 months you say, oh, I should start it differently before. And I'm always using spaghetti and lasagna because my wife is Italian, and I always say I don't like spaghetti. I always like lasagna to build the uniform architecture. So for today, I will talk about metadata data frameworks, about logging. I will do a demo, and during the session, let's do all the Q&A in between. So yeah, before we're gonna start the whole session, I think there are a lot of different frameworks. There are out-of-the-box frameworks, and they are ready to use. It's easy to implement. If you want to customize it to your organization, that will be hard because you have to follow the rules of that out-of-the-box framework. Of course, the session or the framework will be cheaper because you have lower development cost upfront, lower upfront cost, and normally if you buy a framework from a certain provider like Time Extender or Informatica, whatever, you will have ongoing support. But if you have a feature request, then you can wait 6 months. So looking to custom-made frameworks, of course, like more based on your needs. It will probably give you more full control and of the design, what you want to implement. Of course, it will cost you more money upfront to build everything, but you are flexible, and I think that's the most important thing. And also, it's easier to extend stuff if you have a custom-made framework. But yeah, a little bit more expensive. Sorry. And then the whole framework, the custom-made framework, should be based on parameters, because then you can pass through everything, that you can execute one pipeline, execute the next pipeline, passing all the parameters. So I skipped the whole part of what is a parameter, how you can pass it through, but hopefully you will understand that a little bit. For metadata, yes, we can now use a Fabric SQL database. So we can build something native within Fabric, but you can also use an Azure SQL database or JSON files or whatever kind of stuff where you can store your metadata. If you use like dbt, then you have also a repository with some files where the data is there. But like frameworks can be used in Fabric, but like there's still customers using Synapse Analytics or Data Factory. But the main thing is, and the most important thing, if you want to automate stuff, you should use like a uniform architecture. A design which will help you. But today, that's because I'm presenting, we have a third option, of course, because otherwise I don't have a session, because the other things they are there. So this third option will be fully focused on Microsoft Fabric. So what we will be using, of course, the OneLake to store all our data. We will use Data Factory to build pipelines. We will use more the analytical engine. I know this is the new Fabric slide, but analytics is data engineering, data warehousing, and data science, and of course the new kid in town databases. And as we all know, Microsoft is really pushing on databases now because it's new. So they want to have that you are running it, and the more you give them the feedback on databases, they will be happy. Do you have any experience with Fabric databases? Anyone?
No, we don't use the databases. Definitely the data engineering and pipelines.
Yeah.
So the Fabric database is like, if you so that's more for the future. If you look to your capacity metrics, you will see a lot of spikes with the Fabric database, because a Fabric database is an interactive operation. And like if you use a Fabric warehouse, that's a background operation, so that will be more smoothly running. And a Fabric database is more like pointing, because it is directly reacting on the requests you're doing. So if you want to build reports on top of it, that's a good choice for a Fabric database. But if you want to store like more than 1 terabyte of data, that's still the advice that we had previously as well. Go to SQL pools, but in this case, go to a Fabric warehouse, because that's there for massive parallel processing. And a Fabric database works fine with apps on top of it, or functions on top of it. Even the Graph SQL is already in there. But it's still in preview. But again, like what my definition is, when something is in preview, yeah, we all know the Power BI Data Mart has been in preview for like how long? 18 months or something, and then they are now killed.
Yeah.
As of the 1st of June. But I don't think that they're gonna kill the Fabric database. That's my opinion. You will see that like the definition of previews will change by Microsoft as well, because some previews were taking too long. And if you used the Fabric database really for operational processes to do ERP stuff or whatever, then my advice is don't use it in production. If you use it for a framework, that's a different process. It can be really very handful, of course. Then we have Data Factory, of course, which we're going to use. I think most of you know all the data pipelines, all the engine, all the stuff we have in there, but also all the different connectors and all the possibilities to use it. Of course, in the pipelines, we are using parameters like the pipeline parameters, but also for notebooks, also to use it in activities like for a lookup or for each loop container or store procedure. And of course, you can use different templates to get it in there. So everybody's still on par, yeah? Or going too fast? No? Okay. So
okay, perfect.
Let's dive into the Fabric metadata-driven framework, of course. That will hopefully meet most of your needs. You will have full control over design and all the features. You will have less development efforts. You will have all the flexibility and extensibility, and of course, you will have a lower upfront cost. And some of the key features of Fabric, the Fabric metadata-driven frameworks, I'm not going to read it all, but it's like efficient data management. I think it's a cutting-edge solution because it is running fully in Fabric, fully native, so there's no third-party tooling necessary for it, and it will give you a flexible metadata-driven architecture, which are a lot of stuff, what's already explained again. But as you know, if you present a session, then you have to repeat a lot of stuff for 250 people, because some people are not always paying attention or watching their phone, and then you have to repeat some stuff. So again, we're talking about scalability because in this framework, we will use a lot of Spark, which can really scale out for yourself, but it will give you also a lot of flexibility. We are using the most of the Data Factory connectors, so they are already in there. It's cheap because in the framework I built some really logic stuff to use only one cluster and not using every notebook on different clusters, which will cost you more money. So the startup times will save you a lot of money, and it is a streamlined data integration, and of course a little bit of the data governance by maintaining detailed metadata. So we are logging the data and all the processing and stuff as well. So this is actually this is how the Fabric metadata-driven framework looks. So you can connect to different sources by pipeline or by notebooks. All the data is landing in a data landing zone, and I will explain a little bit later what will happen in every landing in every part. So we are using the Medallion architecture in this framework. I'm not focusing on Gold because Gold is way heavier to automate. And this is what you can automate, and that's why you will see it afterwards, but you can use it as well in your own organization, using the framework to orchestrate all the data, but also to log all the data. And we're using notebooks to process our bronze layer and our silver layer. I have to ingest this kind of stuff, but these are the components we are using. So this is the task flows within Fabric, where you can see, okay, we have the Fabric metadata-driven framework. We do full or incremental loads, then the data will be stored in the data landing zone, and then following all the stuff. And you can do some validation and cleansing rules as well on top of your bronze layer or your silver layer. So what my advice is always is, if you make some cleansing rules, do them in silver. That's the most far away from your part. And the only like validation rules we implement on bronze is like checking for duplicate keys. Does the primary key exist? Because if you don't have a primary key, you cannot build your Delta Parquet files. And like in silver, you can say, okay, I want to have this column always in capitals, or I want to have this column that kind of types or whatever. That cleansing rules should be happening in your silver layer. And then, of course, your data will be stored in silver, and then you can continue to build your gold layer in a warehouse, in a lake house, or even what will be released soon in the new materialized views. So the framework will automatically create 5 workspaces, 5 based on the number of environments you have. You can see over here, in this case, I'm using a development environment and production environment. So if you have a test environment, yeah, you have 2 workspaces extra. We do a separation of code and data, and there's a reason for that. We do that. If your code is running and all the pipelines are running there and all the notebooks, you don't want that everybody is touching your workspace where the code is running, because if they change something in the pipeline, then your whole framework is not working anymore. So that's why you can separate the security a little bit by workspaces. I know if you look to the real Microsoft architecture, what they put on Learn, and even they say that for every lake house, you should create an extra workspace. But that's like insane. That's why should you do that? Because you can use different security layers on top of the lake houses. And I'm not going to create like 6 workspaces, because that's maintaining wise also quite hard. And building wise as well, if you build like a framework. So when I said I'm creating separate workspaces for data and code, for easy deployment, but also for the enhanced security, a separate workspace for the data orchestration and logging, so that you can build the Fabric database is also the place where you can store, where you have to store all your metadata. You don't want to give everybody access to that data, because if they mix up or change stuff in there, then probably something is not working the way you expect it should work. And then we have the different lake houses, what I already explained. So we are following the Medallion architecture. In this framework, we're using a data landing zone. And so in the data landing zone, and like the discussion I have with customers, I'm pretty strict in what I'm doing in which zone. So because I'm going back to that lasagna. So if you exactly know, I do the cleansing here, I do the cleansing there, and I do the cleansing here, then you know exactly what you're doing. Yes, Warren.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to ask you, in your orchestration workspace that you had there, what I find is in Fabric especially, it's quite difficult sometimes to sort of follow maybe an audit trail. Like, let's say, for example, I've got a pipeline and I'm using a master orchestrator pipeline that kicks off several other pipelines, and each pipeline does a specific job. Sometimes it's quite difficult to follow like exactly what's happening there in the audit trail. So what I end up doing is I would then typically write my own little audit table, something like that in that Azure SQL DB. Would that typically fit into that orchestration workspace then?
Yeah, so I will show you later on. So all the tables which you need to have to orchestrate this pipeline and to orchestrate all your tables and to store all your primary keys and all the logic, I will show you in a minute. So keep on looking, and I think definitely you will see that. And I think if you're talking about the audit trail, I think you mean the monitor or in Fabric to see what every pipeline is doing or which pipeline has been failing.
Yeah, to see a history of what's been happening in my pipelines.
Yeah, okay. I will show you in a second.
Okay, fantastic. I'd love to see your approach. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I said, in this case we are choosing like the data landing zone. That's where we're only using the file section of the data landing zone in the lakehouse, where we store all the files. Like if you use a source like a SQL, then you have a Parquet files, of course, with incremental loads or full loads. But the data is, and everything is stored in date time, because what you see, or what we have been seeing, is that for a lot of API calls, for example, you get data, and then suddenly your supplier is adding new columns to the API. But if you just read the JSON, you still read the columns you defined. But maybe you want to have these 2 extra columns which they added to the API. Normally they should give you a new version, but not every supplier is doing that. Then you can still have the historical part of your JSON, and you can build for each loop against your year, month, date, and then you can read it again and add these 2 columns again to your bronze layer. So in the bronze layer, what we do is normally deduplicate some data, add all the data types. So if you have a JSON file, you should add your data types. It will be mostly a copy of the source, and you can define the schema. So because we are going to use the bronze layer also already with Delta PK, and that's the same for Silver, where you can define different data types. So out of the box, the framework is supporting, what do you say that, type 2. And you can add some fencing rules. And then once you have deployed that, so that the whole solution that I'm going to show you will deploy these 5 workspaces. It will deploy all the lake houses I just showed you in that data workspaces, and in the code workspaces it will automatically deploy all the different pipelines which are necessary to execute the whole framework, but also all the notebooks which are necessary. So you can see over here, there will be one main pipeline to execute the landing zone. There will be one pipeline which will execute the landing zone, and then all the bronze layers, and then all the silver parts. So there's like a system in the orchestration framework which see, okay, the pipeline from the FTP server has been done, so I know that I can process the data because then I know the file name exactly which will be stored. But I will show you in a second during the demo how that will work. So there are a couple of things which are required. Because of better monitoring, we are using the invoked pipelines, which are, I know they are in preview, but what will happen if you use the legacy part, you don't see anything in the monitoring pane of Fabric. With this functionality, you will see that every pipeline which will execute it, and you can really pinpoint, and you don't have to go to the JSON, go to next pipeline, go to next pipeline, go to next pipeline. You can directly go to the pipeline which was filled. One of the disadvantages of this connection type is that there's only the possibility of OAuth. So if you install this for the customer, please log in with a customer credential, because if you leave that customer from your site, your token will be expired after 30 days. And then the connection will not work anymore. So our advice is create a connection and ask the customer to edit his credentials, because they are using the Fabric environment every day. And we also need one for the Fabric database. So the great thing is with this connection is, if you create a connection type Fabric database, you only have to create one in your whole tenant. And then you can use that connection and that will directly show you all the databases where you have access to. So these two OAuth authentication methods, connections, the Fabric parts, on the roadmap, there is an item that you can change it in the future to a workspace identity, and then it will run under the workspace identity credentials from that workspace, which will be really logic, because why do I need to authenticate to run a pipeline? Which is really strange, because if I don't authenticate, my pipeline is not running. And all the other connections which are needed are based on what you need. So if you want to have a SQL connection, you have to define your SQL connection. The only thing in the framework is that the connection name should start with the connection _FMD, Fabric metadata. Because on that moment, I'm reading directly all the connections directly into the metadata tables from the orchestration framework. You don't have to edit your manually. And what I heard today, so that was one of the issues, if you have a connection without a name, then it will fail. But there's an issue and I will fix it tomorrow. But I never heard that you could create a connection without a connection name. I never heard about it. But it seems to be a really old tenant from Power BI where they could create a connection without a display name. You can't create it anymore. Yeah, you're laughing, Tinus. I was like that. It was a friend of me. He said, I'm using your framework, but this is not working. I never heard about it. So currently all the supported sources in this framework is SQL Server. And that means all the SQL servers which are there. So the Azure SQL database, but also the normal SQL servers. Of course, Data Lake Gen 2, OneLake tables, OneLake files, FTP, SFTP, and ADF. So you can also connect to existing ADF pipelines to build that into your framework and store the data back to your OneLake, so that, for example, we have customers which are using SAP tables, and SAP tables are not supported yet in Fabric. They are coming. So we are using the ADF pipeline to get the data from SAP tables into OneLake. That's one of the examples. And what I already said, all other connections can easily be added. Every connection needs a new data pipeline. So we were talking about extensibility. Of course, if you start rebuilding the framework and adding new stuff, then I cannot upgrade it anymore for you. But once you stay on my part, then it's easy to upgrade every time. But what I said, you should add new stuff, whatever you need, but using the same logic, that will help you. So how can we start? Everything is on my GitHub page, and I will share the GitHub page later on. And I think Nico already added it somewhere in the notes of your PowerPoint. So it's for free. You can start using it. And the most important things you need to have is you have to download 2 notebooks and insert them into one of your workspaces. So you have to create a workspace and upload these files into your workspace. Very important, you have to assign a capacity. And if you want to use the Fabric database, you have to use a Fabric a paid capacity. An F2 is enough. And why? Because we have seen that if you use a trial capacity, you only can create 3 Fabric databases on your trial capacity. And if you're playing around a little bit, then sometimes the 3 are still under the hood. You don't see them anymore, but they are not deleted in the Fabric system, and you get all different error messages. But again, you can deploy it all the time. Copy the notebooks to this workspace so that they are both in there. And if you open the notebook, and I will go through that in a second live, you will see the whole framework, and it will create like configuration lake houses. So all the deployment files which are necessary to build the whole framework will automatically download from GitHub into that configuration lake house to start with. Now, once you have deployed it from GitHub, or you want to deploy it from GitHub, because you can also use it locally, you can say true or false. You have to name the framework, of course. You have to define all the capacities, and you can even define all the different workspace roles. So if you want to have a contributor directly put it on that workspace, or an admin, or a member, or a viewer, it can be automatically done through this notebook. And even if you do it afterwards, so if you run this notebook again while you have deployed everything, you can still use this the functionality to add new stuff instead of doing it manually. And to get that ID, what's in here is the ID from the security group in your Entra ID. Any questions so far?
All good.
No, nothing in the chat. No, looks good. Thanks.
So the next step is, of course, to define the configuration. But actually, you don't have to do anything, because in this page, you have to define everything, and all the names are automatically populated into the system. That's also for the configuration. So your database will automatically have a naming convention. So it will always start with SQL _ framework name, and then the name of the framework, and then the framework. The capacities will be assigned. So you can assign a separate capacity. So in this case, again, if you want to use a trial license for your development and production environment, don't worry, you can do that. But for your configuration data capacity, please use a Fabric capacity for the deployment. If you can change it afterwards to a trial license, no worries. It's only for the deployment. It's pretty strange, and I got a lot of error messages on top of it. So the database is then also deployed and for the Fabric database, and then we get all the different stages. So in this case, I'm using what I already said, development and production. If you want to add a test acceptance, then just copy the block of development, change everything from development to test. But also what you see over here is all the different connections. So if you want to use a connection, for example, SQL 1 or SQL 2 or ADLS or ADS pipelines, copy that the connection ID into here, and you can use different connections for production or for development or for test or for acceptance. But the names should be like what's in here. I'm changing this currently in a moment. That is not important anymore. But I try to import all the connections directly into the database. That's functionality has just been released. Connections, what I already explained. And let's go to a demo. So what I will do. So what I already said. In this case, I have a notebook that multi-environment notebook, what we just uploaded from our GitHub page. So if I go to GitHub, I found out that I can do this like this. If I go to my GitHub, oh, I'm typing. The problem is, oh, he found me. I have a service laptop, and my enter button is broken. So there's a new laptop at the company. It's tomorrow, but so I'm using on-screen display to use my enter button. But mostly I'm using my mouse. So if you see me doing strange stuff, then you know why. So the whole framework is here, including all the documentation, all the stuff you have seen already before, and all the stuff how to deploy is also here. So don't worry if I'm going too fast. All the documentation is there. And if you have questions, you can ask it through the discussions. And if you have issues, please log into the issues as well. So going back to that framework, we have just uploaded these two notebooks, which are in here. They are here. We will check if that lakehouse configuration where I was talking about already exists. If it doesn't exist, it will create that lakehouse. And then the next step is, of course, okay, I want to download all the metadata files from GitHub. So that's true. I'm assigning my capacity IDs. So that are the capacity IDs from your admin portal. And then I can define what I already said, the workspace roles, the configuration, and all the different environments. And of course, everything is already prepared for my environment, because otherwise it's pretty hard to do a demo. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, I don't have Karoo over here somewhere. So I'm just going to click Run All. And in the meantime, I'm going to open another notebook. And going to all the output. So what I said, I have all the details over here. Then I will import some libraries which are necessary to build everything. Then I'm just creating an empty deployment manifest. I will download all the configuration from GitHub, mounting everything, and you will see that everything is working. Then I'm loading the utils. So in the utils are all the functions placed which are necessary to run all the other stuff. Because otherwise, I'm creating a really large notebook. So I prefer to have like a utils part where I define all the functions, and then I can call out all the functions over here. This is just to show you at the end of the process all the things what happened during the process. I'm using an access token based on your token. So you need to have access to a capacity as well. So you need to have at least contributor access. Make sure that you have that, because last week I had a call. Do you know Paul Turley? He's one of the Power BI guys from the US. It's not working. Yeah, he had no access to his capacity with that account. And he logged in with a different account. Yes, you can see I have access. Yeah, but not your account which you were creating the. So your user token is responsible and it needs to have access to build the things. Then it will check if your token is still valid. Oh, sorry. So then it will check if your token is still valid. And normally the token is always for 16 minutes. And then it will start deployment. What it will do in this case, if it doesn't exist, and then I will show you in the other notebook, it will start creating all the workspaces. It will start creating, it will connect the capacities to that workspace. It will assign the roles to the workspace for that development environment. And again, of course, it will do for every environment. So if you add a test environment or acceptance environment, then it will work as well. Then it will go through all the things. Did you got a failure in between? Just start the notebook again. It will just pick up where it was. Then it will do some remapping of the databases because of the database names. Then we have a definition. It's not very important. Another definition to get a Fabric database, and then it will start executing or deploying all the different pipelines which you just saw in that picture automatically to the system. In this case, so the first step is it will create an empty pipeline, because that's the necessary definition how Microsoft is saying that's the best way. So it's creating an empty pipeline, and then in the second step, it will start updating the pipeline with the correct definition. what will happen in this pipeline or in this execution, it will replace all the IDs. So if your workspace ID is number 1, for example, my workspace ID was number 0, so it will say, okay, I will replace that 0 with the new connection ID. And this is very important. But all the connections ID I just explained to you in the beginning of the pipeline, that I need these IDs, because otherwise I cannot replace them. And otherwise, if you don't replace the ID, so if you remove that SQL1 connection or you don't fill in anything in, it will automatically deactivate your copy activity. So if that's just happening, you will get a warning in here that it will, as you can see, in this case, I don't have the ADF pipeline. It's saying, okay, I will deactivate the subactivity invoked ADF pipeline so that it will not be executed. Because if you have failures with all these pipelines, then you're running pipelines without correct connection. But one of the most what has been changed is that everything is now based on the new connection parameter in the pipeline, so that you will get less failures. But I will explain in a second. Then it will get all the connections from your environment. That's why you need to have the correct rights as well. So all the connections you created or you are assigned to, you can read. So all the connections you don't have access to, you cannot get. That will be in a statement, and then it will follow a lot of stuff to build actually the whole framework, and also insert already one of the basic stuff into the framework, the basic necessary information. So all the lakehouse details are there, all the workspace details are there, all the connections you created already are already in there. Everything will be inserted automatically. All the pipelines are there. What I said, it will go through. So in this case, and at the end, you will see that everything will start. If you get like an error message of this, just run that cell again. Because sometimes your database has not been started because it was just created, or it's still busy with inserting other stuff. And if you use an F2, this kind of message that you have a timeout can happen, because with an F2 you have only like a small capacity, which will can only facilitate a couple of store procedures and not all them directly. So I'm running this on an F4, and almost I never get any errors. So. And then you will get in the last step, you will get all the different things what happened during the process. So let's go back to that Peru stuff, and hopefully the session is ready, and hopefully we have executed everything. So in this case, as you can see, assigning workspace role. Did I didn't change? Oh, sorry. I should have changed this. So what happened afterwards? So I will show you that it is really working. So in here, you will see that you will have all the different stuff. So even this, how do you say that, flow, you can download it from, that's new since this week. You can download it from my GitHub, and you can go to task flows. You can go to import and export. And if you have that task flow downloaded from my GitHub, you can go to import from this computer, and then you can select the file, and then it's directly there. And then you only have to assign the correct task to your thing, because that I cannot automate, sorry. So, but then you can assign, okay, I have the framework over here, so I have to assign that, etc., etc. So what I said, all the stuff is in here, all the different pipelines, and actually there's one pipeline, and that's your main pipeline. I call it the load all. That will execute all the different stages. So that will execute your landing zone, that will execute your bronze layer, and that will execute your silver layer. And in this case, I'm using that invoke pipeline preview, but now you see that I'm here. I have the fabric pipeline in this workspace, and it will execute that landing zone, and it will pass through some parameters. But the great thing is that if you look into the monitor, then you will directly see that it will run the correct parts. But I will execute it in a second when we're ready. So going back to that, so now you have seen the code over here. Let's go to the data. You will have the 3 layers, so bronze, silver, and the data landing zone. in there. And the last part is, of course, that we have to go to that configuration database. So in that configuration database, you will have a couple of schemas. So the most important is, of course, the integration, where you have, so again, you have the lending, bronze and silver. So there are also stored procedures which are described to get them and also to upset them. So you have a stored procedure to insert the data into the lending zone. And then you know the ID of the lending zone, you can insert it in the bronze layer. But if you look to here, you will see that all the connections with starting with that com_fmd are in there, as you can see. If you have different names, then there will be different names. So the connections are there. Then we have the different data sources, and the data source is actually is the ID to the connection. And in this case, I can have the same data source for development and for production, but with a different connection, of course, because the connection can be to production environment, and the other connection can be to development environment. So this name is used as a database name. So the name, what kind of type needs to be executed, because I need to know this type, because then it's getting to the correct flow. And you can define a description. The lake houses are inserted automatically. The workspaces are inserted, and you can also use the bronze layer. And yes, of course, you will see a lot of stuff already in there. Of course, you're not going to do everything by hand. So what I have built for you is there's one pipeline. I call it like tooling. What you can do over here is that you can say, okay, what is my connection ID? What is the data workspace? Because I need to know in which data workspace I need to execute everything. The worldwide importers, and then you can define all the tables. And now it will read from your, in this part, it will read from your wild world importers database, all the tables and all the metadata, and it will automatically use to insert, to build up your landing zone, your bronze layer in your silver layer, so that you can run it automatically. It's only working for a SQL database currently, but it's a good start. If you deploy a wild world importers or InventionWorks, then you have a start to see how your framework will work, so that you definitely can import it. Besides that, and it's also written in the documentation, there's also one file which you can upload to your data workspace or to your data environment, to your data landing zone, and that will flow. So if you don't have added any new database, there is one file called a customer file, just a schema in the name, and then you can check if your flow is working, the whole flow, so that it gets in landing in bronze and into silver. That's automatically inserted in there. So let me check again if I have, just by refreshing the whole stuff, I should have, oh look, it's all created, the Karoo workspace. If I go to that workspace, I can see that it has been assigned to a certain capacity. Oh yes, that's working as well. I do have all the different notebooks, so going to the notebook. So if you go to that, what will happen? Where are you? Yeah. So I just showed you the load all, and now I'm going to that separate part. This is the landing zone, and in the landing zone there's like for each entity. So there is, this is the part where you will execute the different pipelines. And so in this case, as you can see, if the type of your SQL database connection, going back to that to show you. So in the connection here, oh, sorry. Yeah, in the connection here, you will see a type. So that's the type from the connection. If I know this is a SQL, then my it will automatically know I have to go to the SQL connection. And if I'm going to that SQL connection, I can open that one. There are two parts. Not every one has that one. So it will execute then of course the SQL part. It will look up. You can add more different entities in here, but it will go to here. And then you say, yeah, why are you using so many pipelines? if you want to monitor that better into your monitor, then it's better to have separate pipelines, because if you do put a lot of activities in one pipeline, it's pretty hard to find where the error is. So open the pipeline, I call it the SQL1. And SQL1, you can see, okay, one is getting all the items from SQL1. So if I go back to that SQL database, I know it's going to be a little bit confusing, but if I go to the data source in here, I can define a type. If I want to have a different database, because as we all know, for each loop container is only executing 20 tables in every time. And the first wants to execute all the 20 tables, and then it will start with the next 20 tables. But for example, if you have two databases, then you can put in Azure SQL 2, and then it can run simultaneously. Then you can execute more in the same flow, because like if you want to do data integration or data to get the data in, you want to do it as fast as possible. So going back to that to the pipelines just explained, this is like you have to go through it, explain it, everything. You will see that everything is starting with a audit pipeline, a separate process for the copy activity, an end pipeline, and if it is failing in between, you will get also an error, and all the data will be logged into the logging database. What I want to show you more. So what I said, we are using a special thing in here. So if you go to bronze, you see that I'm only using one notebook. This one notebook, we call it the main or the parallel notebook. Oh, this is not an error. This is like normal. Oh. It's doing like it's getting all the parameters from the configuration database. It will get all the entities. And the main thing what I want to show you in here is that we're actually using we say that in here the run multiple. And what does run multiple do? It's executing every notebook which is in my parameters. It will be executed on the same cluster. So I'm only using the couple of cores I got. And otherwise it will execute every time a new session. I know you can also enable high concurrency, but then it will still create a new notebook and it will use cores. And this way, you also can define with the activities in here. You can automatically define all the retries, the retry interval seconds, and also the timeouts. So there's a lot of flexibility with executing the notebook, which are not normally you can do with the notebook activity directly in Data Factory. So this notebook starts, then that cluster is running, and then it will automatically execute the normal bronze layer notebook. So going through that bronze layer notebook, it's all based on parameters. So don't change anything in here because otherwise you're mixed up. It will get some libraries as well. It will show me the starting time. There are some stuff in here. As you can see, I'm disabling v-ordering when I load to bronze. Because the most important thing in what I think is if you load to bronze is to insert as fast as possible. Because in bronze, normally you don't want to read or build reports on top of it or read data from there. So once you want to build reports on top of something, or you're going to build a gold layer on top of your silver layer, then the v-ordering is important because that will give you more faster read access. It will read the file from my landing zone. It will define, so this is the file section. It will define my table section where I want to store it in my bronze layer. It will read all the data. I can go through. It will, if you have several primary keys, it will split on the correct way. It will check if the primary key already, if it exists in the source or not. Because yes, you can define ID1, but if ID1 doesn't exist, so then your notebook will fail. It will automatically hash that primary key column, so because that I can use it afterwards to my silver layer as well. I don't have to apply the primary keys again. You only have to define the primary keys on your bronze layer, and then we can reuse it afterwards. It will check for duplicates. If you want to add some cleansing rules, there are some cleansing rules. Please check my documentation. If there are cleansing rules, then it will run a separate notebook. It will add some hashing as well for all the normal columns, so that we can check if it was updated or it was inserted. And at the end, it will create a table. So if the file doesn't exist yet, then it will stop afterwards. It will stop here. If it already exists, then it will continue to merge the data, and it will exit with a runtime, some data that you can build your own long reporting on top of it. The only difference with so in here you will see the difference between incremental and not incremental. The only difference with Silver is that the Silver layer, there is some more stuff, and that we built in. There is automatically built in at the end. Where are you? There's a lot of more details in there because there is automatically the SCD2 part, in, so that you can store all the historical stuff that you know that someone has moved from location A to location B. And yes, not all the tricks and tips are in there because it's like a free framework. People should continue to build everything there, because if I give all my code from my company, I think I have a discussion with my boss. So that it can run, and what I said, I can show you a little bit. If you run this pipeline, if this pipeline is there, it should start executing or inserting all the data into that framework. So the whole logic is in there. Let me quick check the presentation. So what is finally deployed? So you will see all the different workspaces. You will see all the different pipelines. You will see all the different notebooks. And yes, the presentation is from 1 month ago, so we have added a little bit more already. We will have that SQL framework, which is automatically deployed. This is changed because previously I was using a warehouse to store all the logging information, but I changed that to the SQL database because before FabCon, the stock procedures activities were not supported by a Fabric database. And I didn't want to rebuild everything. And then suddenly on the Saturday evening, I rebuilt everything to a Fabric database because it was just supported. I had nothing to do in Las Vegas except to go to casinos. No, I was something with jet lags. I was awake. So I rebuilt everything over there. So the whole data model you will see, so the integration, the pipelines, the workspaces, all the relations in between. And of course, we have also a schema with all the execution that we know. We store the last load value of the source that you know what was last loaded. How we'll have to execute the landing zone part in here. Once you execute this one, it's also connected to the pipeline landing zone entity. So I can only execute the process in Bronze once the process has been executed also in the landing zone, because otherwise you get failures that the file doesn't exist. And then of course we can process the Silver layer. And of course we have some logging information only stored. So the logging information is not really big in the sense of really big. There is no semantic model yet to build reports on top of on that one. So looking to that landing zone entity table, the source schema, the source name, there is a custom selected as well. So there are customers saying, okay, I want to have select A, B, C from table X instead of select star. The file types which is coming in, the incremental, of course, or and if you enable incremental, you should also define the incremental column, Bronze layer entity with some pending rules, and the Silver layer entity table. This is what I just executed in here, as you can see. So I've copied the data from here, and it will execute all the different pipelines directly to insert it into the framework. So if I go to that Karoo configuration database, you now will see directly the tables in the Bronze layer, probably. with the connection to their landing zone entity, to the correct lake house, the schema, the name, the primary keys from the file type. There are no cleansing rules, and if they are active or not. And if I start that load all pipeline, then it will start executing all these different stuff. But I think it's almost 6:30, so executing the whole framework will take a little bit too long. The last part of my session, where are you? In here. So I just showed you this one. This is a demo. Then we have the logging information, what I already explained. So going to start to end, it will log all the pipeline activities. It will log the copy activities. It will log the notebook activities, and all to that layer. So the semantic model still needs to build. But if you go, I will show it live. It's easier. Going to the such a pipeline, this one. So if I go to that start pipeline, you will see that all the default variables are used from the Fabric workspace. So these are like the system variables which are used, which are passed through to the database. It will get all the data from the KDUG framework with that view I just explained with the separate source type, and then it will start executing and start logging it at the end. So if I show you how that works in that framework over here, logging tables. So there is a pipeline over here. It is empty because I didn't run. So then it will store the workspace ID, the pipeline run, the parent, so which pipeline has been executed based on this pipeline, the pipeline GUID. So this is the run IDs, and this is the pipeline GUID, the name, which parameters has been passed through, what was the entity ID, so that what was landing zone, a bronze or silver layer entity, which layer, so the 3 different layers, this kind of streamer type, and all the log data. So if you do use a copy activity, then you can see also the the rows read, rows extracted, and the rows etc. So the more you can add. So if you go to like a notebook, the data which is outputted in at the end here, this part will be you will see into that log data, and you can do whatever you want to do afterwards. Just storing the data that you can start with it. So far, so good. So this is the exit value which you can use to store in that log data. Yeah. Did you use it before? The exit value of a notebook and then passing through to a SQL database? This is a trick how you can do that. And then you will see this kind of data that I just showed you in the entity table, but this will be filled and you can build all your reports. So if you look to the conclusion, I explained to you really like 1 hour ago about the out-of-the-box framework, about a custom-made framework, and now you have the Fabric metadata framework, and a lot of features are in there which you can use, and you can build yourself and maintain yourself. But yeah, mainly I took away all the upfront costs to start with. The key learning and best practices. I think metadata-driven approach is the best practice for managing data pipelines. Medallion architecture. I know there's a lot of discussions. You can go red, blue, white. I don't care. But the most important thing is define your logic in the correct container. I know that there are companies using landing, raw, and curated, but it's more about what you put in there, and that's the most important thing. And start small, so build it and start slowly build it out to a bigger framework that people understand how it will work. And of course, we have also a commercial solution. That's with the UI on top of it, and a lot of more logic into there. This is a marketplace offer, what we are using to all our customers, because and they pay a monthly fee for it. But that's why the other one is completely free. So if you want to connect, I'm here. If you want to use the Fabric metadata framework, it's there. I think Nico has the GitHub link as well. And if you want to know more about our commercial solution, it's in the middle of the screen. And then by that, I want to thank you for listening. Maybe there are some questions left. I know a lot of information in 1 hour.
Yeah.
Thanks, Erwin. Yeah, no